Well, that was the Minister of Works and former Ebonyi State Governor, Engineer Dave Umahi, briefing pressmen at a FEC meeting recently on projects being, carried out by the federal government as well as by his ministry all across the country. Now to the first conversation of the day. We're going to be joined virtually at this point by Mr. Babalola, who is on the line with us. Hello and a very good morning to you, sir. It's wonderful to have you join us on the program.
Good morning to you.
Well, it's wonderful to have you join us. Thank you for joining us on Morning Express. First things first, let's kick off with the issue of a recent statement made by the leader of the NLC, Comrade Joe Ajero, where he said that the NLC would not be going on its planned strike action over a 50% telecom tariff hike in the country. Is this good news for Nigerians? Is this good news for the NLC? Should we be excited? What is the atmosphere like and what should we be expecting?
Yes, good morning to you once again, good morning, Nigeria. I believe there is a good development because based on the meeting the NLC and the federal government delegation had yesterday, I believe there will be a kind of a resolution that will be favorable to both consumer and the telecom consumers and the telecom players.
Well, now the telecoms industry in Nigeria has sort of suffered quite a lot of attacks recently from different quarters. If you remember the situation between telcos and about 9 Nigerian banks, 18 in general, and then 9 that the NCC later gave the green light to the telcos to disconnect over non-remittance of USSD, payments and all of that. And that case is still on, and now we are seeing the telcos moving for a tariff hike, and yet the NLC is kicking really hard against that. What exactly is the situation with the telcos in the country? Do you think that we should be expecting more investment into the telecommunications industry to sort of ease out the burden on this big four that we have in Nigeria?
The government has a lot to do on this issue of tax, so to say. It's now becoming a serious burden on the telecom player.
Yeah.
So, we, are you with me?
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear, Mr. Lukman.
So when government should consider the issue of this unnecessary tax, so that the consumers will also not bear the burden, too much burden on the issue of this tariff. Because when you look at the argument was that the cost of production, that is what it takes to to give the consumer the necessary what's it called, for the consumers to enjoy the telecom services. It takes a lot. So that is why the burden is now on the consumer. So government should look at the tax and find a possible solution to the tax, so that the burden will not be much on the consumers.
Well, it's basically a chain of action that sort of creates this ripple effect from the tax reform bills, which I hear the National Assembly is set to resume talks on today. Cutting across increased taxation on corporate income tax and all of that. And I believe it is in anticipation of what this might do for businesses that the telecommunications companies have decided on an increased, tariff hike. And being that the last time there was any tariff hike in the country was more than a decade ago, don't you think that the telcos might have been right in their decision to increase tariffs for call tariffs and data tariffs across the country?
To be honest with you, and to the telecom operators, the hike is justify in the sense that what is what they put in place, servicing the mass and other paying tax and wages and other expenses they incur in ensuring that we enjoy telecom service. It's not something that you can joke with. So the hike is justifiable in the sense that they should also kind of look at, they need to check what the production cost like. So why government should also look at the burden the consumers we have on them. So it's a two-way thing. They are trying to justify the fact that the cost of production in Nigeria is much, and also the consumers also they should also consider consumers that the economy is not friendly now. So hiking the tariff we may not be it may not sit down well with the minds of in the minds of consumers.
Well, it's certainly not going to sit well in the minds of Nigerians or consumers, considering.
Hello?
Well, I can hear you. I'm saying that it's certainly not going to sit well with many Nigerians. If you take a look at it holistically, from the increase in petrol pump price to the ever increasing electricity tariffs, to the food insecurity currently bedeviling the nation, and now Nigerians are faced with yet another tariff hike that will likely make lives more difficult for Nigerians. It's not looking good for the large population of Nigerians that we have in the country. Now, but on the flip side, the NLC and the federal government have decided to, set up a committee to discuss this and ensure that a headway is made. If you recall, the telcos had proposed a 100% tariff hike, and then NCC had done some negotiations on all of that, and then they came down to 50%. Now, many people are of the opinion that even though 50% is fair, maybe the federal government should have done some sort of intervention to ease, way of doing business for these telcos, so that to also reduce the burden on the backs of Nigerians. Your thoughts, please.
Well, the what is expected from the federal government is the issue of taxation. So, and also power, so to say, because most of these telecom companies run their mass and other equipment on the generating set, alternative power source, so and which costs much on them. So government should look at the taxation and also ensure that they have steady power supply, so that the burden will be less, the financial burden will be less on them, and at the same time the consumers will enjoy a very friendly tariff.
All right, Mr. Lukman, I will come back to you in just a short moment. We have here in the studio joining us Mr. Seun Oni, editor-in-chief at the Daily Courier. It's wonderful to have you join us. And I don't want to say Happy New Year because I believe we've met twice this year, but Happy New Month, however.
I wish the same.
It's
good
wonderful
to see you again this morning.
Sharp.
Thank you so much.
Well, I was just asking Mr. Lukman, about the recent statement by the NLC, suspending the planned strike action over a 50% tariff hike, telecoms tariff hike, and I was just getting his thoughts with regards to that development. Let me switch that question to you. Is this good news for Nigerians, and do you think that there might be a possibility of a reduction in that percentage?
It's a cheering news, I must say. Yesterday, I was on a station, and I emphasized the fact that Labour must need to exhaust his, what's it called? The weaponry in his arsenal.
Yeah.
Before throwing protest and strike and all the other options that they have that might have very adverse effects on the economy and the country as a whole. So when I got the news after the marathon meeting they had yesterday, that eventually Labour had, in consultation with his other affiliate that is going to put on hold to the protest that was earlier scheduled for today. It was a cheering news for Nigerians, and I hope going forward they can sit at the table and ensure that the best interest of Nigerians finds eventually its place. But I must admit that increasing tariff of telecom is actually more of a business decision. We are all aware of the very dire economic situation in the country. Yeah. Those in the telcos also, they are having a very hard bite. But the conversation around the table should be, Labour says it wants 5% increase. The telco says 50%. So I want to believe eventually they will judge and arrive at the midpoint that will be fair to the telcos and that will also be fair on Nigerians who are already having a very hard bite of the economy.
Now, two things you've stated. You stated that you want the NLC to exhaust, its arsenal before going into the, telecom tariff hike discussion. That is on one hand. And you also cited that the telcos want 50%. NLC is saying 5%. The disparity between these two percentages is quite wide. Do you still think that there could be a common ground where the telcos would have to would come down from the 50% and perhaps the NLC will step up a little bit higher, considering the fact that the telcos had initially proposed a 100% tariff hike, it was slashed in half, and now NLC still wants them to drop?
Sadly, too bad for telcos and the NCC. I really don't know how that type of discussion that will have far-reaching effect on the 240 million plus population of Nigerians was actually hatched and concluded without bringing in the consumers, which of course Labour represents in this context. I really don't know how the Minister of what do you call that ministry again? Digital Economy, Mr. Dr. Osun. I really don't know how he did that, but I think that was wrong ab initio. Now they will have to go back and explain. They have to bring their books. I heard one of the spokesperson to one of the telcos actually said that even though previous years they made profit, but that for the past few months they've been running about 160% of the previous revenue they ran in the previous years. 160%. All right. So that means even if you are looking at the margin of profit, they will have to bring their books to NLC and other people on the negotiation table.
Larger revenue doesn't necessarily translate to
larger profit. So they have to bring it and convince NLC that that 50% at least will give them an appreciable profit. Like I said, it's a business concern. It's not a welfare or a social service. Right. And so profit making is one of the reasons why any billionaire, any millionaire will want to put his money and go into any business.
Into that venture. Now, Mr. Lukman, you have heard the points beautifully laid out here by Mr. Seun in the studio, talking about getting or reaching a common ground between the Nigerian Labour Congress and the telcos in the country, with the telcos standing on their 50% and the NLC demanding a 5%. Do you also think that there could be a common ground in this situation?
Yes, good morning, Mr. Seun Oni, my dear colleague. What I would like to let us Nigerians understand is this: that demand from the NLC to me is not achievable, because when you look at the production costs and other things involved in this, just like Mr. Oni said, the telcos are into business and they have to make profit. So it's not a charity organization or an organization that meant to just serve the nation without return. So definitely that NLC demand is not achievable.
Well, why do you think it's not achievable in detail? Can you break that down for us?
You need to look at, the increase is as a result of the production cost and the transition put in place by the government. So all these things, you know, the negotiating committee need to look at all this on the side of someone running a business and with sole aim of making profit.
Now, one of the major reasons, Mr. Seun, that many persons believe that the telcos are, you know, hinged on ensuring that they increase, you know, the tariff, call and data tariffs across the country is due to an anticipation of what the tax reform bills might do, you know, to businesses across the country. You had cited the economic downturn that we are currently facing as a nation, biting hard on the backs of Nigerians, biting even harder on the backs of businesses who continue to grapple with profit margin continuing to slim down day in, day out. We hear that the National Assembly is resuming today, and talks on tax reform bills will be accelerated. Hopefully, a common ground will be reached once again. What should Nigerians be expecting with regards to the tax reform bills and in relation to businesses in the country?
Fair enough. Anyone who says, for instance, the tariff hike is partly as a result of the anticipatory tax reform bill might not be totally wrong, but we must also put in context that the last time we had a tariff hike or review in the country was around about 11 years ago, 2013 to be precise. And again, you must also know that between then and now, Nigeria and the subcontinent across West Africa actually charges the least when it comes to data and call tariffs in West Africa sub-region. I did a bit of study yesterday, and if we want to compare, for instance, the Southern African region, what they charge compared to what we charge here, the difference in 1 gigabyte is as high as about 3,000 naira. If you convert it to naira.
Gigabyte.
Yes, 1 gigabyte. The difference between what is charged in SA and Nigeria. Someone told me on the panel yesterday, why are you comparing us to South Africa? I said, well, I really don't want to compare you to the US, because to the US, 1 gigabyte is above 10,000 naira, yeah. All right? So you don't compare. But when you compare us to Ghana, to Nigeria Republic, and they are still a bit higher in terms of their data costs, then there is a major issue. So that we must contextualize that for a very long time, the businesses in the telco have actually been finding their feet. And that's why I really think it's a good thing that the NLC is actually coming in. The proper thing to do is open your books, let them see. We made 2 million naira, all right? We are spending 1.95 on overhead cost and all the rest. Do you want us to continue this way? Eventually, some of your members will join people who are unemployed if we continue this way. You know, those are the type of conversations you have on the intelligent conversation. That had been my position, that NLC cannot just wake up and tell a business person that you cannot charge XYZ. Meanwhile, they had members. For instance, the president was still at the stadium on May 29th. The 2023 subsidy is gone statement, when their members, independent petroleum marketers, started hiking prices of petrol. Yes. All right. The following day, their members in AURTW and the other affiliates also hike their transport fares. So telcos are also into business. That
was why I had cited that it is a ripple effect cutting across different sectors of the economy.
But now, when you go to telcos, we want to push back. I'm a Nigerian. It will affect me too. It will affect my call rate. But that's the reality. We must be very logical and not just speak from the place of emotion. So I think also partly what people don't understand about the tax bill, and that have been projected a whole lot, is the fact that for the first time we'll be having a likely progressive tax in Nigeria. All right, tax
taxation can be progressive, can be regressive, and can be proportionate.
Okay.
All right. For the first time, we were told that if your salary is not to 3 million per annum, for instance, you will not be taxed. I think that's fair enough. And businesses, small businesses, really don't need to fear in that regard.
Yeah.
But telcos are not in that mini category.
In that category.
So that's why I actually said people who said they were anticipating the impact of the tax hike might actually be right, because the tax hike definitely will have effect on, you know, major companies like the telcos.
Well, another thing that we might also consider is the number of telcos that we have in the country. There are just about 4 major telcos, or only 4: MTN, Glo, Etisalat, and Airtel, I believe, at the moment. If there's any other one, you could add it.
Well, we actually have other telcos who are not nationwide. Like the Starcoms, they are also categorized as telcos.
As the telcos,
too.
but
Yeah.
we have the major four that
yes.
Nigerians know.
Yes.
Now, we recently also got wind of information that Starlink, which is gradually becoming very popular in Nigeria, with, you know, households now owning Starlink devices, businesses switching to Starlink instead of, you know, buying data from our own telcos here in the country, is looking into venturing into calls. Now, if that happens, what do you think will be the future of, or the fate of these telcos that have already, you know, been subjected to some sort of stunted growth due to all of these indices? Looking at the NLC situation, the NCC situation, their situation with the banks, what is it looking like?
Sadly, I won't agree with you that
Okay.
They have been subjected
subjected to stunted growth. Why I'm clamoring that they have that right to ask for more. I'm also aware that in the previous years, the telcos in Nigeria might just have subjected us to what we call excessive profit. And so they might now be crying now,
Yeah.
because the size of profit is beginning to shrink and reality is beginning to dawn, all right, that in a more competitive environment, you can't be making that type of humongous profit they were making before now. I think partly, maybe the economist in me is telling me that. You must also realize that if you have giants like Starlink coming into the country, it's a good omen for the populace. It simply means that market will be more liberalized, more competitive, and what that does to the consumer is that, for instance, if the services of X is not good, you can quickly shift to Y.
To what?
If the tariff of Y is not good enough, you can move to X. So it's good for the final consumer. So I think it's a good thing, whichever we want to look at it. And they are business people. If before now they were making a profit of, let's just say hypothetically, they are making a profit of 1 naira over a gigabyte, and that competition comes and they want to survive, it means they will cut 1 naira maybe to 50 kobo or 40 kobo. That's how business decisions are done.
Well, quite very brilliant analysis there, Mr. Seun, but I might have to hold you and we'll need to move on to other discussions. Mr. Lukman, are you still with us on the line? Well,
Yes, I'm with you.
Well, very fantastic. National Assembly is resuming today, and talks on the tax reform bills, the much controversial tax reform bills, will resume with the National Assembly alongside the Presidential Committee on Tax Reform Bills set to reach a resolution very soon, with talks being accelerated. In your opinion, what should Nigerians be expecting? Are we seeing an end to this deadlocked conversation that has lingered on for many months?
Yes, Nigeria, to me, Nigeria need a tax reform. The base should stay for the economic growth. You know, I believe all these protests and discussion on the tax reform bill is all about patriotism. So at the end of the day, we all agree with the fact that we need tax reform bill for the economic growth of our dear nation. because it will give more room for each or each state, so to say, to look inward and harness whatever God has given them, that is the natural resources, for the growth of that very state and their nation. So the discussion is about, for us to agree, for the benefit of the nation.
Well, how about states that have not yet been able to, harness such potential like the ones that you have cited, or states that might not really be privileged enough to have to even have these potentials? If you take a look at it, clear example, if you are comparing perhaps Katsina State or Zamfara State to Lagos State or Port Harcourt, or River State, I beg your pardon, you'd find that the possibilities, the potentials of these states are very far apart in terms of productivity. How about states like that? Do you still think that maybe the reason why there is a lot of kickback from northern states is because there hasn't been enough time given for these potentials to be harnessed in its full form? Hello, Mr.
Recently, I was in Zamfara State and Katsina State.
Okay.
When you look at the huge amount of gold deposited in that Zamfara State, if properly harnessed, there will be that if some people sustain beyond the state and even the nation. Because of the fact that all states believe whatever that is coming from Abuja is enough for them. So that has been making them to not look inwardly and check what they have and analyze it. So that as a reform, we give them the opportunity to harness such a deposit, to those such a natural resources deposited in their state, and work on it on how to make use of it and for the growth of their state and the nation as a whole. So each state is blessed with natural resources that needed to be exploited, so to say, and for the benefit of the people in that state. So they should stop relying on federal allocation. They have the resources, if properly harnessed, for the growth of their state.
Well, the federal allocations will still come in, but the key word there is to stop relying solely on federal allocations, by this or some of the states who might not have the necessary potential or have not harnessed or tapped their potential to be able to generate as much revenue as needed to develop the state. What do you think?
Sorry, Mr. Babalola, good morning, sir. He has made very valid point. We have found ourselves in a federation where we are really not federating anything. We are still carrying ourselves like a unitary state. And the beauty of the tax reform for me is that it's going to help us begin to exploit and explore untapped potentials. We are a nation with a huge potentials, but we've not been able to convert these potentials to possibilities.
Yeah.
For me, I think the tax bill that is before the National Assembly, if it is passed into law and it becomes a law, will help activate and wake to a large extent the sleeping giant. I must also say that I really don't know why the National Assembly, after getting the leeway, the tax bill was embroiled in a lot of controversy, especially up north. But for the past few weeks, we have seen that stiff opposition collapse. We've seen the governors uniting behind the bill. Even those who are very vicious, the vicious critics of the bill, like Bauchi State Governor, for instance, after that united position, by northern governors and opposition governors, he's practically not said anything about the bill again. Yeah. So I was thinking the National Assembly will ride on that wave, all right, and expedite action. So that's what I'm hoping. Eventually, when they resume, that they will expedite actions. If there are still areas that they need to actually talk about, the legislative processes require also that they do what they call public hearing, so that expert opinions will help make the tax bill better. And other dissenting voices also can have a say, so that eventually, because like Mr. Babalol rightly said, even the worst critic of the bill, in my opinion, is speaking from his own limited idea of patriotism. So when we see issues that way, we can always converge on the table, all right, and have meaningful conversations that will be eventually for the overall interest of the nation, Nigeria.
Now the Nigerian Governors Forum sort of, endorsed a revised VAT formula. I believe you must have heard about this a couple of weeks ago. That allocates 50% on equality, 30% derivation, and 20% based on population. Now, this has been described as a very huge and massive breakthrough in the talks regarding the tax reform bills. In your opinion, is this really a breakthrough that the governors have now backed it, and with this VAT sharing formula, are we seeing a leeway ahead?
Everyone in Nigeria, of course, knows that outside the presidency, the most powerful blocs in Nigeria are the governors. Yeah. The truth that many people really don't like talking about is that majority of senators actually are there due to the magnanimity of the governors. And I will not even talk about the Green Chamber.
Which is almost like a handout.
Almost a handout. Well, you can be sure that more than 80-90% of the people there, they actually got there due to the benevolence of the governor. Yeah. And if you want to have a return ticket, bear in mind, 2 years is gone already. By next year, politicking will start fully. So if you want to have a return ticket, if you receive a call from your governor, that's the direction we want you to go, and you don't go, you know what it means. You are not returning in the next election cycle. Governors are that powerful. So if they now back what seems like an opposing, a major segment of a large chunk of them were actually antagonistic initially to the bill. Yeah. In fact, some of the very vocal ones, like Professor Zulum of Borno, he came out, said some things, but eventually, like I always say, you see, we must always find a way to ensure that logic trumps emotion. We have this penchant in Nigeria to always drive conversations around ethnicity, around religion,
tribe, sentiments, basically.
Very unfortunately, I would say they are very secondary fault lines, but they have become the greatest constraint to our growth and development as a nation. Anybody who be honest will tell you that. We want to take decisions. We are not taking decisions based on excellence, based on character, based on who has the best pedigree to fill those void. The next question we are asking, the person who left there, was he a Christian? Was he a Muslim? Is he a Yoruba? Is it an Igbo? That's the kind of conversation we are having. In the heat of the insecurity we had in this country, you still had people, highly educated people. And sometimes I will even see policy analysts with titles like professor, and they are still dancing and pandering to those very secondary fault lines. Yes. So it's a breakthrough. We agree totally that all governors are now backing it, even though there are a bit of adjustment here and there. But you must also know that what they said, they are actually not policy statements. It means when the National Assembly eventually gets to possibly the point of public hearings and the other processes, they can still change those figures. All right.
There will still be a review.
There will still be a review, definitely. It's not a policy statement. It becomes law when the National Assembly passes it and the president assents to it. So let's see how it goes. We've gotten the buy-in of the most powerful bloc that has antagonized it. I'm glad also a whole lot of the religious voices after the governors and northern governors spoke, they've not been very vocal again. So that means the oppositions are actually reducing, and it's a good breakthrough for me.
Well, certainly a very good breakthrough for Nigerians and Nigeria. Talking about the tax reform bills, and the governors throwing their weight behind it with a new VAT sharing formula coming into play. As Mr. Seun has noted, there would or might still be some review when there's a public hearing, and conversations continue to be held with regards to that. Now, Mr. Babalola, let's talk about another perspective with regards to the health sector in Nigeria, where the country has voted about $1 billion US for the health sector and also for human capital development, with aid or funding for HIV and AIDS being pegged at about 4.8 billion naira. Now, this is in anticipation of the ripple effects of a recent U.S. Policy shift, with President Donald Trump stopping funding for HIV and AIDS treatment to Nigeria and many other African countries in a sweeping move that has cut across the EU, UK, and many other countries across the world. What are your thoughts on this? Is this a move in the right direction, and is this a sustainable move?
I didn't get you right, please.
Well, I was talking about. Hello, can you hear me, Mr. Babalola?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Oh, all right, fantastic. Now, I was saying that Nigeria has voted over $1 billion US, for health sector reforms and human capital development, in anticipation of a recent U.S. policy shift that is set to stop funding of HIV and AIDS medication to the country. Nigeria has also allocated about 4.8 billion naira towards that cause. Now my question is this a move in the right direction? This movement by the federal government, and how sustainable do you think this move is?
Okay, that is, I can say that the directive or the decision of the federal government to allocate such amount is a good one. America should not believe that they have it all, that everything is about them. I look what the reply the South African president gave to Trump concerning the directive of not extending funding to African country again, and I love that. So we Nigerians, we have proved today America that yes, we can do it, and we have what it takes to do it better. So to me, it's a good one. So I believe what we need is how to sustain such a network, that is, so that the money will not go to the wrong hands and it will be used for its purposes.
Well, let's hope that the money doesn't go into wrong hands, and let's hope that proper surveillance and monitoring of the funds, released by the federal government is carried out. Let's also talk about international bilateral relations between Nigeria and the United States, with Trump's aggressive move on many countries across the world, including Nigeria. Now, I believe you know how strained the relationship between the U.S. and Canada has become in just a short while since Trump assumed office as president. Also relating it to Nigeria, do you think that we might also see a strained relationship between Nigeria and the United States of America?
We shouldn't be surprised. The policy adopted by the US president is a kind of a waking us up that yes, it is time for us to be self-reliant. We should not depend on the foreign aids all the time. So there's nothing wrong there if we on our own decide to solve whatever is giving us, and we work on how we can sustain our sectors. So America should not be playing God. So we should know that Nigeria should also know that yes, we can do it, and we have what it takes to do it better.
Well, I will come back to you in just a moment, Mr. Babalola. Mr. Seun, you have heard his points there, concerning a strained relationship between Nigeria and the U.S., or an anticipated strained relationship, especially with the aggression that the president of the U.S. has met virtually every single nation, that has had to do business with the U.S. in some way, or has had to receive funding from the U.S., especially Nigeria, South Africa, and many other African countries.
That's a good one, but we must also realize that we are having two major issues on our hands.
Yeah.
First, America's greatness was not built on building fences. American greatness was built on building bridges, reaching out. That's why they refer to themselves as the greatest nation on earth, because it's a nation that was built on the idea of liberty.
Yes. And
liberty suggests that you are building bridges, you are liberal, and that's been the central nerve of the greatness of the United States. But now you have a president that where everything to Trump, for instance, is more like his days in The Apprentice.
Yeah.
Okay, and nations are beginning to wake up to that reality. But it's 4 years. That 4 years can make or mar, because not just the U.S. The thing about multilateralism is that nations grow together. When you now begin to pull the plug off multilateralism, nations also will, what I think the right word those days we usually use is that nations will also sink together, if you do the right thing, nations will swim together and enjoy it. If you do the wrong thing, nations will also sink together. Like Canada clearly told the president, Justin Trudeau, like he did said yesterday, you see, if we begin to also retaliate, it will affect the United States economy.
Yeah.
We will have our own fair share, we know, but it will affect you people too. And before you know it, inflation figures will start rising, unemployment will come in, and they saw it. They've gone through it before. They don't want to experience another 1948. They don't want to. They don't want to experience another 2000, 2001 depression. U.S. don't want to have it. He's telling his nation anything that is going to come at them is going to be short term. I don't think it will be short term. And I agree with what Mr. Babalola said. The president of South Africa was very clear. You are just mentioning the funding coming here. The funding coming here, by the way, is just one segment, health, and it's less than 10% of what's going on there.
Exactly.
But unfortunately, our own is the reverse. All right? The funding from international donors, spearheaded by the United States, constitute almost everything that we have been using in fighting certain type of disease, especially HIV/AIDS and malaria. That was why the clamor was very high.
I mean, it's about $6.5 billion US annually.
Yeah,
cutting across
different several, So it's a huge one. In fact, the question nobody is asking, and I think we should interrogate that. This money that has been released during the FEC meeting yesterday,
4.8 billion for HIV and AIDS treatment.
All right, what percentage is it taking care of? Because the order Trump gave is that immediately they should not fund anything until further notice. So people in that sector had actually said if nothing is quickly done in response to that blocking of a huge source of funding. We might have an escalation of HIV pandemic across the country.
Yeah.
We might have a resurgence of some of the diseases that we have a hold on. So we must have that conversation. What percentage is it going to take care of? And what are we going to do to ensure that this funding is sustainable? Because we can't be depending on fake meetings, more like a handout to deal with major issues across the country. We should think out of the box like South Africa has done.
Now it's the sustainability issue that has been a major concern for me, and I believe for many Nigerians. The major question, the biggest question on the table is, yes, 4.8 billion naira has been handed out, even if it covers the entire percentage or a certain percentage of the treatment for HIV and AIDS across the country. How sustainable is it?
I think it's the right question. How sustainable it is will be dependent on a number of factors. Like there was a time I asked that question. The idea of, and that's where the tax reform bill will come in again. The idea of saying a percentage of taxes will go to helping ski set, like our ITF, there's a percentage of money that goes there. NSTIF, there's a percentage of taxes that goes to those kind of places.
Yeah.
Why not devise that type of very sustainable means to ensure that health and education, for instance, in Nigeria is properly funded? I think for me that's the right thing to do, so that in the long run we can begin to cut ourselves from this type of situation. Because Trump will be there for 4 years, but what happens if somebody like Trump comes into office again? So we'll find ourselves in this type of quagmire. But if we have devised a sustainable way of funding this issue, especially health and education, like I rightly said, we would have had a hold, and we can also begin to plan on how to mitigate, eradicate some of these health issues.
All right, Mr. Lukman, just before we let you go, your final comments on this issue in just a few minutes.
Yes, just like Mr. just said now, I believe we should look, the Nigerian government should look at how to sustain this funding for the health sector, not for the immediate need, even for the future, because you may likely find someone like Trump in the next another 4 years. So it is better we cultivate the habit of self-reliance, so that the foreign or his coming from outside will not be a thing that we rely on. So sustaining it is the best for us, the best, and also utilization of the such fund and proper monitoring is also very important.
All right, Mr. Lukman, I must thank you so much. It's been wonderful having you join us virtually from Suleja here on Morning Express. Hoping to have you again next time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful day.
You too. Well, that has been Mr. Lukman Lalye Babalol, publisher, Emporium Reporters Online, lending his thoughts to issues of national interest here on Morning Express. Now, Mr. Seun, back to you in the studio. We have just a couple of minutes to wrap up this conversation. Let's go to Ebonyi State, where something rather drastic and catastrophic has happened with a recent herdsmen attack on certain communities in the state, leaving many people homeless. A lot of farmlands were burnt, razed to the ground, homes were burnt to the ground, and people are now fleeing their communities within Ebonyi State. It's almost as if we're seeing a depiction of what happened during the height of, the Boko Haram insurgency, where people had to leave certain communities as IDPs within, their states. What do you make of this development?
Sad, tragic. Those were my immediate reaction.
Yeah.
Condolences to families who have lost loved ones and those who are seriously impaired in the hospitals. But I think the quick intervention of the state government and other is commendable.
Yeah.
To ensure that first and foremost is halted on its tracks and we don't have further loss of lives. I think the next thing that should be done should be quick investigation to really unravel. Most of the news is being alleged herdsmen, because that part of the country, Ebonyi, is known, I think, historically for communal clashes. That's what we know them for. That's what we know them for. That usually lead to loss of life, killing each other. They go to one community. But when the dimension of herdsmen came in again, we actually thought we had nipped that in the bud.
Yes.
Right. Even in the north central and in the northeast, where we have a preponderance of
farmer-herder clashes,
we have not heard that
a very big issue.
Then we've not heard that for a period. I was surprised. Far southeast is now where we are seeing that level of destruction. Is concerning, and I know, of course, the security architecture also, they will seriously be concerned about it, because it was just, I think it was yesterday or the day before, that the Minister of Defense came up openly and he said that the president gave them an ultimatum that they must arrest all lingering security, whether terrorism, banditry, herdsmen, attack, this year, that he gave them a timeline that they must ensure that they wipe everything out this year. So when you now see a place where we don't hear things like this going there, that means we must, are they running from one side and crossing to another place?
Or could it be the situation in the southwestern part of the country where, southwestern governors had given orders to Amotekun to sweep through southwestern.
So they are now running from the place to that's why I say investigation, so that we really know how to ensure that we don't have a repeat of this type of a thing. I think for me, that's what we must focus on. Lives have been lost regrettably. Properties, a means of livelihood, like you said, farmlands have been burnt. But how do we ensure that we forestall a repeat of this type of destruction in our country?
Now that still takes us back to the issue of confined cattle grazing and all of that. There were talks a couple of years ago about it, and the Mietiala Cattle Breeders Association kicked really hard against it. And now with the establishment of the Ministry of Livestock, and all of that, how do we address these issues? Do you think that the Ministry of Livestock could come into play to ensure that issue of herder-farmer clashes or herders attacking communities without cause could be stemmed down or completely eradicated in this case?
I think for me, the statement I made earlier, let me recall that again, that we are running our federalism as if we are having a unitary state. In other climes where we have a federalism, what happens is that each state, states of the federation, decide on how best to secure people within the immediate boundary of the state. They cater for their security, their health, their education, and what have you. The federal is now saddled the responsibility of the federal security. How do you secure the nation against external aggression? They are not bothered about what happens within the state, as it were. It's the state governor that is supposed to take responsibility. So I was really seriously stunned when there was a pushback in a part of the country, of course, the northern part of the country, where we have majorly the herdsmen being domiciled. Maybe not domiciled, where they hail from. They hail from there because they are really not domiciled there.
Herders, and they
move. They really don't domicile there, but they hail from there. So the pushback came from them. But I think what was right, that's why you had the state assembly. We saw what happened in the southwest. Even though there was pushback, there were threats. May God rest his soul. The late Akeredolu, the governor of Ondo State, he put his feet down and rallied his colleagues in the southwest and insisted that security architecture must be put in place. And anyone who is fair in assessing the security situation in the country today will tell you the most secured part of the country today is the Southwest. That's based on statistics. You can't argue with that. And it's due in part to the Amotekun that came into the rescue. Because you can now see that on governed spaces, because research has shown it, that the major reason why insecurity had festered in the country is because we have a large swath of ungoverned spaces. Ungoverned spaces. And so it's always very easy for you to hear that terrorism is thriving. Ask where. They will tell you desert in Zamfara, in Sokoto, in Borno,
or Sambisa Forest, which isn't really a forest.
It's supposed to be a government, it's ungoverned. So they can go there, you hear they've set camp, and before you know it, I see some videos and I ask myself, the number of people in this area who are armed, they have much more than some villages.
True.
And they are there. No police, no military presence, and all of that.
They carry out their businesses. We saw a recent report that a monarch in Taraba State had collected 1.5 million naira from bandits for them to be able to set up their camp in his community. It also begs the question as to the complicity of certain monarchs or traditional rulers in this insurgency, in this banditry or kidnapping that continues to linger for far longer than it is, it should be. Are these monarchs also complicit, and to what extent are they, and how do we nip this issue to the bud and ensure that it's stemmed up?
Well, before we talk about how complicit the monarchs and the others, we've had in the news local government chairmen backing them. We've had those kind of instances, and I did say here, I think it was Brian that was on set that day, and I told them, even if you're a first-class monarch and a group of guys walked in with AK-47 to your palace and asked you, we want X, Y, Z, what will you do?
Well, certainly, I would agree.
You can do anything, especially when you now start thinking that the closest police station to your community is like 45 minutes, 1 hour drive. So before you even make calls, if there are telcos in your area, in some areas you don't even have telecommunication, there's no way you can have decent conversation.
But Mr. Seun, that is just a portion of monarchs, or this is just a few situations where the bandits or the non-state actors would superimpose their leadership on the monarchs or on the communities. How about instances where the monarchs take money from the bandits to allow them roam, almost like a ground rent? Come and stay, carry out your businesses, we will shield you.
See, I was just trying to drive my conversation to our federalism. Why is 40? Okay. Because ask yourself, who gazettes and license traditional rulers?
Local government chairman.
Local government under the oversight of the governor.
The governor, yes.
The governor actually gives the first class and all of that, but the local government would have gone through assess and all of those.
Vetting and
all of those. So the buck again comes back to the decks of the governors of the state. They must take responsibility on first ensuring, because all the state assemblies are actually appendages of government houses. Each of them must go back and ensure that even if there are no laws that help them to ensure that security in their states are properly governed, possibly they should do, that's the type of money you will spend, that I don't want to think anybody will criticize you. Maybe do an study of other federalism. Maybe a governor can just, maybe 3-5 person, and just study laws of a number of states in the US who are running, because we copy their federalism. We tried the UK parliamentary it didn't work. So we copied the presidential system in the United States of America. Maybe you also see how they make laws, especially in the area of security. And you're going to see that there are certain states where, even though the president in power favors you having gun license and all of that, some states put their feet down and say, no, we don't want it in our state. And that's the purpose of federalism. It means when you are in that state, you can't.
When you are out,
you can. You can. That's what I expect in our country. But we have seen in this nation, even when Obasanjo said, insisted that no state must force Sharia, states like Zamfara insisted.
And now they have Sharia.
Because it was religion. They were able to push back and insist that Sharia must stand.
And we're seeing Sharia gradually creeping into some southwestern states, but the governors are now kicking out against
that. That is it. When it comes to, we said it earlier, when it comes to fourth line of religion, of ethnicity, all of them will be up in arms. But when it comes to economy, human capital development, security, that type of energy suddenly will fizzle away. What stops Ebonyi, for instance, to insist that there is no open grazing?
No open grazing.
If state assembly can pass the law. If they have done that maybe 2-3 years ago, we will not have what we are having in the lives that have been lost now. Sadly, we won't have it. Because as soon as they are grazing, it means the security that is saddled the restaurant, because the law also will tell you who does what if people are grazing. Yeah. They would have taken hold of that. But you won't see them deploy that type of energy when it comes to things that can better the lives of people. And I always say, Nigerians are not asking for too much. Just ensure that people can have decent life, people can work, not being afraid that a terrorist,
farmers can go to their farm
without fear of being killed, being kidnapped, being maimed. Are we asking for too much? We are not asking for too much. So our leaders must start giving. But unfortunately, they don't live in these communities. They don't. I know of several governors that you can be very sure from Monday to Friday of every week, they will be in Abuja at least one of the days. And they are governors of their state. But instead of staying in their state, they live more in the FCT.
Now, I don't want us to delve too deeply into the issue of state policing, because it appears to be one topic that has always, almost on a daily basis, been a part of topic of discussions, on forums like this and all of that. However, if you will touch on the issue of state policing, do you think that at this point, perhaps state governors across the country might start considering taking the issue of state policing more seriously than they have been doing, to address these certain peculiarities of insecurity in different states? Ebonyi State didn't have this herdsmen issue in the past, but now it's there. The Southwest didn't have the issue of banditry and kidnapping, but now it's there. In fact, at some point, if you hear of kidnapping, it's mostly in the southeastern part of the country. It was most domiciled there. But now, if you hear of kidnapping, you think Southwest. Is state policing the way out of this debacle?
The funny thing, whenever I'm asked this question, is that we already have state police. It's just that we are not using the nomenclature state police. Go to Kano State, for instance. You have Hisba. They are everywhere. But what are they policing? Morality.
Religion.
They are policing morality.
Still takes us back to your earlier comment.
It is the thing. We are more fixated on the minors
than the
major. And no country make advancement. It's like 21st century. Advanced nations are planning on how to deploy AI, blockchain technology and all of that. Yeah. Guess what we are still doing? We are budgeting billions of naira on how to help people get married.
In Kano State.
That's what we are budgeting in the 21st century. No budget to ensure that guys roaming the street, you can bring them up. No budget for that. We budget for things like computers, vehicles that will, of course, we will not patronize local manufacturers. We bring
imported.
We bring them in, and we are saying that naira is struggling against the dollars. When you have this type of people, unfortunately, somebody says the reason why we are where we are is because we have the worst of us leading the best of us. I think I agree in part, because some of the focus of government policies churned out by government. I ask myself sometimes that these people, do they really wish us well as a nation? Because if they wish us well, you don't see them taking this path. They have children abroad, they travel abroad, they see the advancement, they see the progress made across the country. But when they return back, something upstairs just tells them that we don't deserve this level of progress, this level of innovation. And so when they return back here, they take us like 50, 80 years backward, instead of thinking about how to take us 50, 80 years forward.
From my understanding of your statement, it's more of a mindset issue than availability of resources or potential in terms of human capital development and all of that. It's just the mindset not to do the right thing to grow. We're more, Nigerians in general are more fixated on religion, on ethnicity, on things that do not really drive economic or socioeconomic growth in the country. Is this right?
Well, mindset, but the mindset also is aided by laws that have been put in place to favor only the elite. I think for me, or how do you explain that a Nigerian will jump the queue in MMA 2, and the moment he gets to Heathrow, he stays on the queue? That certainly can't be mindset. It's just something inside that tells him that it's above the law.
Well, it's something that I honestly can't understand, and I believe just as much as I'm lost on this, you are also lost. But let's be hopeful that the glory days of Nigeria will return, the days of discipline, much like when the former military head of state, General Muhammadu Buhari, was in power, where you had war against indiscipline
and corruption
in the country. Well, still talking about security matters in the nation, in Osun State, a recent Obaship crisis has seen 7 police officers being shot, with scores of people wounded in the state. Now, the Governor Adeleke, has ordered a probe and an investigation into this crisis. Now, Mr. Seun, I don't know if you are from Osun State, but what do you make of this, recent crisis? Whenever it comes to the issue of rulership or kingship, either emirship, the Sultanate in Kano, Obaship, or whatever it is, there is always a huge bone of contention, and it's almost as if there are lives at stake at all times.
I'm from Ekiti, but I'm also aware that unfortunately, I really don't have insight so much on this news item to know the exact town, the village, so that I can properly situate my opinion. But I'm also aware that the governor came in and had some misstep when he came into office. He's coming in, of course, he knew it was very contentious. He came as an opposition to unseat an incumbent who was from the ruling party at the federal. You remember the current minister of the marine, blue economy, Oyetola, was the incumbent that he unseated. He wanted to go for second time. He unseated him. So there were actually communities that were pro Oyetola at the time, that when he came in, normally there'll be patronage here and there, and he took some actions then that led to hostilities brewing within communities. I would have, if I have known the name of the communities, I've been able to speak to that. But like you rightly said, Obaship, kingship issue, whether you want to talk about North, I think northern part, they're a bit much more better when it comes to that. But when it comes to the South, whether Southwest, the Southeast, the South-South, is usually very contentious, maybe due in part. Up North, religion often determines who gets what. An entire community just believes when an emir goes, maybe the son or somebody in that family, quickly they sort it out. But of course, we know what's happening in Kano. It was not that easy in Kano to determine who is the emir. But in our side, you can have, you're aware what happened in Kogi State just a few hours ago too. The late Oba, for instance, the late Ohinoyi of Ibira land in Okene. I was born in Okene, by the way, in Kogi State. We knew that he spent his entire reign going to the court.
Interesting.
His entire reign. And I'm talking about a reign that was almost about 40 years. From one court case to another, So it continued like that. So the new person who just came in now, he's been ousted. I know he's going to appeal it again. So he might also find himself in that situation. So it's like that. That tells you again that maybe there are some perks like political office that we don't know about.
Now, to give you a background to this conversation, it happened in the Ido Ajegunle community in Obokun local government area of Osun State. Now, this was it was learned that hoodlums on Monday, attacked the community following the appointment of Timileyon Ajayi as the new Olojudo of Ido Ajegunle by Ademola Adeleke on the 23rd day of January. So this is an appointment made by the governor, and it might have been an issue of the community dwellers or the community people not wanting the ruler that had been imposed on them by the governor. That also brings us to yet another question in terms of rulership or kingship in the country that has been subjected to the discretion of the state governors. We have kingships that have an ancestry. I mean, you know how monarchy works. Father, son, and all of that. Is the style of monarchy in Nigeria different from the actual definition of monarchy in the world?
Like I said much earlier, up north, religion is a major factor. Yeah. But in the south, it's usually not that easy. And when you mention Obokun, what I was actually saying, my guess was actually very correct. Yeah. It was the community thinking so person would be the person, but unfortunately the person was seen more
as an APC
APC man.
All right.
So when the list got to the governor, somebody who he thinks will be able to work with him and will not sabotage his effort, to give it to him. In that case, a large portion of the community really favors the other person, and it escalated. Yeah. We've seen that severally. And monarchy is monarchy globally. Yeah. But it now depends on the other intricacies around monarchy. We have communities in the south where it's just a single family. True. We have communities where you have like 10 different clans and it's rotational. So you now have the problem when it's rotating to even within. So you usually have first conflict within and conflict laterally, to other
extending to other.
So that is a very complex. It's a complex web. Yeah. So when you now bring politics into it, sometimes maybe after 2-3 years, the communities agree and say, we are wasting time. Let's present somebody. You send it to the governor again. The governor look at him as, you used to be in also opposition party. He said, yes, but you now be a king now. He said, no, it can't happen. And unfortunately,
you cannot entirely take away
politics from our monarchy now. Monarchy. No, you can't. You can't. And
so what happens to monarchies that have an ancestry, say in a particular family, like the case of Kano State? Take religion away or take religion aside. We know that in the entire emirship of Kano State, there are two major families contending for the position of emir: the Bayero family, and of course the Sanusi family. If it's not the Bayero family in power, it's the Sanusi family in power. Now these positions, or the position of the emir, is not determined by the laws, traditional laws set from time immemorial, but rather at the discretion of the state governor that decides to favor either a Bayero or a Sanusi.
it still goes back to our elite. Try to do things to suit them, not looking at the general interest of the society.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it's sad when we behave that way. Usually when they make those laws, chieftaincy title laws, you can just do a study across all the states in the federation. There is always a lacuna that if maybe the governor thinks that so king is not in the best interest of the state or something, they will just put a lacuna there that will make a governor to just wake up one day to be able to unseat
the
ruler. So even if you use your traditional, like you cited in Kano, 2 families, I see that this, but the moment a governor comes here and he said, the law says, so he will use that as a basis.
Because everybody is subjected under the law.
Under the law. So he used that as a basis, and that's why even the traditional rulers, their council, they've been advocating for that, to find a way to ensure that the traditional institution now find a constitutional role in the country. I agree, but far and above that is that they must also find a way to sever traditional institution from political interference. If we can do that, and we have a monarchy, how it's practiced in other climes like the UK, for instance, I think will be better for it. So that the only thing they need to do is, when the tradition has concluded its own job, your job is to just recognize them legally, just give them the legal instrument. I think that would be the best way to go.
You it's still in line with, talking about courts sacking traditional rulers and all of that. We saw a recent news that a Kogi court has sacked the Ihinoye of Ibereland, talking about His Highness Tijani Anaje in Kogi State. When monarchs are sacked in such a manner, what does it do to their presence as, a traditional ruler? Traditional rulers, from my own understanding, are meant to be revered to a certain extent. As long as they are not breaking any rules, they are not being mischievous in any way, they are supposed to be the beacon of hope for most communities traditionally. What does this mean?
Well,
courts just sacking a traditional ruler, like, suspending a civil servant or something like that.
But historically, we have even had much more revered traditional ruler, like the Sultan of Sokoto, the incumbent.
Yes.
It was Dasuki Masido that was unseated, and he came in. So that's almost the most revered traditional ruler in the country. So it happened on the caliphate. So it's really nothing new again. It's no longer novel. We've had historical antecedent to back that, and we'll continue to see that. Bearing in mind the political influence that has actually taken over the hitherto traditional processes that usually throw up who ascends the throne as the traditional ruler. We'll be seeing more of that now than we were even seeing before. For instance, look at the situation going on in Oyo State. The most respected king in that state, the Alafin of Oyo.
Of Oyo, yeah.
Alafin of Oyo, the most respected king in Oyo State, and by far one of the most respected king in Yoruba land and even in Nigeria. The traditional council brought up somebody, the governor says no, and he set up his own committee, and his committee brought another person. The case is already in court, and I won't be surprised if another governor comes in and he tells them to go and revisit it again. So,
which is very likely.
It's very likely. So the moment political discretion comes in, that in itself is an avenue for corruption.
Interesting.
It's an avenue. The moment you allow discretion to come into a thing, because the danger about discretion is that your discretion is not my discretion. I might just hate you because you have better body build than me. I might just hate you for that.
Might not be any tangible.
It might not be anything tangible. And another person might just come in and say, well, and it's become a joke now, especially in our part of the country.
Yeah.
Have you even asked yourself why traditional institution now is usually anybody who has japa and is coming back now that is usually winning it now?
You know, give them a traditional.
That means those of us in Nigeria now, even if we are from the family, it's not likely. So we must find a way to japa so that when you return, you will now be
control of the throne.
That's what happens when you bring political interference into what is supposed to be traditional, because there is no morality in politics.
There is no morality in politics. No better way to leave it there than what Mr. Seun Oni has just stated. But I must thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. A very robust conversation on the program.
Always my pleasure being here. Thank you for having me again today.